You know, they say that life-altering moments usually come with a warning. A sudden drop in temperature, a crow cawing on a fence post, ominous music swelling in the background. Something to tell you that the ground beneath your feet is about to crumble. But that's a lie. Real tragedy. The kind that dismantles your entire existence, usually sneaks in on a Tuesday morning while you're making coffee. It arrives quietly, dressed in the mundane, waiting for you to let your guard down. For me, the end of my marriage started with the smell of roasted hazelnut coffee and the soft, rhythmic tapping of rain against the kitchen window. It was a morning that felt identical to 1,000 mornings before it. I was standing by the counter, watching the coffee pot fill, feeling that groggy, comfortable warmth that comes with routine you've built over 5 years. My wife, Marissa, was leaning against the sink, scrolling through her phone. The sunlight was trying to push through the blinds, casting these little striped shadows across her face. She looked beautiful. She always did in the mornings, soft, unpolished, real. I remember looking at her and thinking, man, we're good. We're solid. I picked up my phone, intending to check the weather, maybe see if the Buckeyes had made any off-season moves. Instead, a notification from our bank app was sitting right there on the lock screen. It was a joint account alert. We shared everything. Money, secrets, space, or so I thought. Bridgeport Women's Health, $250. I frowned. It wasn't a huge amount, not enough to break us, but it was odd. Marissa had a regular doctor she'd been seeing since college, a nice lady named Dr. Evans over on 3rd Street. Bridgeport Lane was on the other side of town, near the wealthier suburbs. It was a private clinic. Expensive. Discreet. Hey, honey? I asked, my voice thick with sleep, but casual. I wasn't accusing her of anything. Why would I? In my head, this was an error, or maybe she went for a second opinion on something minor. She didn't look up immediately. Her thumb hovered over her screen. Mom, what's this hospital bill? I said, turning the phone screen toward her. It just popped up. Bridgeport Lane? Is everything okay? That was the moment. The match striking the gasoline. She froze. It was subtle, microscopic, really. Her shoulders locked, just for a fraction of a second, and her thumb stopped scrolling. Then she slowly turned to face me. She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was a customer service smile. Everything is fine mask that I hadn't seen her wear in years. Oh, that, she said, her voice breezy. Too breezy. It's nothing, just a checkup. I frowned, lowering the phone. A checkup? You just saw Dr. Evans last month. And this place, isn't that the private women's clinic? The one near the country club. I just wanted a specialist. Logan. God, why does it matter? It doesn't matter, I said, confused by the sudden edge in her voice. I'm just asking. You okay? You aren't sick or anything. Her smile dropped. It didn't fade. It fell off her face like heavy glass shattering on the floor. She set her mug down on the counter with a sharp clack. Logan, why are you monitoring every dollar I spend? I blinked, taken aback. What? I'm not monitoring. You are, she snapped, crossing her arms. Do you really have nothing better to do than audit my life? I can't even go to the doctor without you demanding an explanation. Audit. I stepped closer, my hands up in a gesture of peace. Marissa, I'm not auditing you. I got a notification. I was worried. If it's medical, you don't get to worry like that. I thought maybe you were scared or something was wrong. I'm not scared, she hissed, her eyes narrowing. But I am annoyed. You always do this. You come in with that calm, collected, I'm just asking questions act. But it's control. You're trying to catch me doing something, aren't you? That stopped me cold. The air in the kitchen suddenly felt very thin. Catch you doing what? I asked, my voice dropping an octave. She turned sharply, tossing her phone onto the counter like it was burning her hand. She couldn't look at me. She was looking at the fridge, the floor, the window, anywhere but my eyes. God, Logan, you never say what you really mean. You just poke and prod until I'm the one who snaps, and then you get to act like the victim. It's exhausting. My jaw clenched. I could feel a pulse ticking in my neck. You're not hearing me. I'm not angry. I'm confused. I found a medical charge at a clinic across town and asked a basic question. Why are you acting like I accused you of cheating? Her expression flickered. Just for a heartbeat, I saw panic. Pure, unadulterated panic. And then, as quickly as it came, it was replaced by a wall of ice. Maybe because you don't trust me, she said, her voice low and venomous. Maybe because you're always watching me. I trust you, I said, and I meant it. Or I had 5 minutes ago. But right now, I don't recognize you. The way you're talking to me, it's like I'm the enemy. You are, she muttered under her breath. I stepped back, physically recoiling. It felt like she'd slapped me. What did you just say? She didn't answer. She just grabbed her mug, dumped a fresh coffee into the sink without drinking a sip, and moved toward the door like she was fleeing a fire. No, I said firmly, stepping into her path. I wasn't a guy who blocked doorways, but I needed to understand what was happening. You don't get to walk away from this. Tell me what is really going on. This reaction? It's not about a bill. It's too big. She stared at me, eyes sharp, lips pressed into a thin white line. And for the first time in 5 years of marriage, looking at the woman I promised my life to, I didn't see love. I didn't even see frustration. I saw resentment. Let it go, she said. If you love me, you'll drop it. I shook my head slowly. That's not how love works. Marissa, you don't drop a bomb in our finances, act like a stranger, and then demand silence as a proof of love. She scoffed, a harsh, ugly sound. So this is about money now. No, I shouted, my voice finally rising, cracking the quiet morning air. It's about us. You're hiding something. And the way you just exploded over a simple question proves it. Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. The only sound was the refrigerator compressor humming in the corner. She stepped around me, her hand trembling slightly as she picked up her keys from the hook. Don't wait up, she said. And then she was gone. The front door clicked shut, and the lock engaged with a finality that echoed through the entire house. I wasn't shocked by the bill anymore. I was shocked by her voice. That tone, it sounded like she hated me. I manage a bar in downtown Columbus. It's not a glamorous job, but I love it. Late nights, regulars have become family. Stories that float over the polished wood of the bar top. I come home just before sunrise most days. Marissa works mornings at a dental office. We've always made the shifts work, passing each other like dancers in a routine choreographed over time. I thought we were good. Not flashy, maybe a little tired, but good. Now, standing in the silence of my kitchen, I wondered if I'd been sleeping through a slow collapse. Because whatever just happened, that wasn't nothing. It was the beginning of something coming undone. That night, I got home later than usual. I'd picked up an extra closing shift for a coworker, partly to help him out, but mostly because I was terrified to go home. The apartment was dark, except for the soft, amber glow from the hallway nightlight. I stepped out of my work boots and padded quietly through the living room. Marissa's purse was on the entry table. Her coat was draped neatly over the banister. It looked like a normal night. It looked like everything was fine. But the house felt quiet in that heavy, unnatural way, the kind of silence that isn't peaceful, but waiting. I found her upstairs, already in bed, buried under duvet like she wanted to disappear into the mattress. She didn't flinch when I entered the room. She just kept scrolling on her phone, the blue light casting a ghostly, pale glow across her face, highlighting the frown lines between her brows. I changed in silence. Normally, this was our time. She'd wake up a little, ask how the night went. Maybe I'd tell her about a guy who tried to pay for a Guinness with a library card. We'd laugh. We'd connect. Tonight, nothing. Just that cold blue glow and the sound of her fingers tapping the screen. She was there physically, but mentally, she was in a different zip code. I slipped under the covers beside her. Careful. Quiet. My hand brushed against hers, lightly at first. Then I traced my fingers along her arm, a slow, familiar gesture. She didn't move. She didn't lean into it. She was rigid as a board. After a moment of agonizing hesitation, I leaned in, rested my hand on her waist. Hey! I murmured, my voice low, trying to bridge the gap. Can we just forget today? Just for tonight? Still nothing. Then a breath, sharp and annoyed. She turned away, pulling the blanket higher over her shoulder, putting her back to me. Logan, I have a headache. That was it. 5 words. 5 ice-cold, unbending words. I froze. Not because she said no. I'm a grown man. I don't expect a yes every time. But it was how she said it. No warmth. No sigh of exhaustion. No, sorry, babe. Rough day. Just that distant, clipped voice like I was some stranger on the subway who had rolled too close to her. It wasn't rejection. It was disconnection. And that hollowed me out more than any argument could. I rolled onto my back and stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above, shadows flickering across the room. She was inches away from me, but I'd never felt farther from her. Can you imagine that? Lie in the same bed you've shared for years, smelling her shampoo, feeling her warmth, and suddenly feeling like you're trespassing? I stayed still, listened to her breathing even out as she fell asleep, or pretended to. I wasn't sure which was worse. I wanted to believe she was just tired, just stressed, that this would blow over by morning. But deep down in the pit of my stomach, I knew better. Something had cracked this morning. And tonight, in the dark, I watched the fracture widen. This wasn't about a bill anymore. This was something bigger, something unspoken. And now it was living in our bed with us. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I just lay there, heart thudding, mind racing, waiting for the sun to come up and answer a question I was too afraid to ask out loud. The morning light bled slowly through the kitchen blinds, golden and warm, completely at odds with the chill that had settled between us. I was up early. I'd toss and turn all night, my thoughts looping endlessly like a skipping record. I stood barefoot at the stove, frying 2 eggs out of habit, our morning ritual. Or it used to be. I didn't expect conversation. Honestly, I wasn't even sure I wanted it. But something inside me refused to let the silence win. I plated the eggs, buttered 2 pieces of toast, and sat at the table alone. No music, no news, just the clinking of my fork and knife echoing too loudly against the ceramic. Marissa finally appeared. She was already dressed for work, hair pulled back tight, makeup sharp, armor on. Her heels clicked across the floor with the same precision she used when avoiding eye contact. She opened the fridge, pulled out the orange juice, and poured herself a glass. Still no hello. She moved around the kitchen like I was a ghost. Then it happened. The clink. My knife tapped the edge of my plate. Just a little too loud. A little too sharp. I wasn't trying to be obnoxious. I was just cutting toast. But apparently, it was enough to shatter her composure. She spun around, eyes blazing. Do you have to eat like that? I blinked, fork halfway in my mouth. Like what? Like you're building something, she snapped, gesturing at my plate. All that scraping and banging. It's 7 a.m, Logan. I stared at her. It's breakfast, Marissa. She folded her arms, leaning against the counter, radiating hostility. It's inconsiderate. You know I'm sensitive to sound. I set my fork down, slowly, deliberately. You mean since last night? She rolled her eyes. I'm not doing this with you again. No, I said, standing up now. I was calm, scary calm. I don't think you've done anything with me in a while. Her expression flickered. What is that supposed to mean? You're angry, I said, but not at the toast, not at the fork. You're lashing out at me like I did something unforgivable, but you won't say what it is. She shook her head, laughing bitterly. You're reading too much into everything. You always do. I stepped closer, my voice quiet. I'm not the one hiding things. That hit. I saw it land. Her lips parted like she had something to say, a defense, a lie, something, but nothing came out. I pressed on. If you don't want to talk, fine. If you're tired or stressed, okay. But don't treat me like I'm some stranger who barged into your life and made you miserable. Logan, no. You're angry at the wrong man, Marissa. I cut in, and if you don't tell me what's going on, I'm going to stop waiting for answers. Silence. A long Stretching silence. For the first time, she looked caught. Not furious, not defensive, just paused. Then she grabbed her purse from the chair, her fingers trembling slightly, and turned for the door. "I have to go to work," she whispered. I didn't follow. I just stood there and watched her go, heels clicking down the hall, fading one by one until the door slammed shut. The kitchen, once our safe space, now felt like a waiting room for a diagnosis neither of us wanted to hear. And in that silence, I knew I had always tried to protect our peace, bend to her moods, make excuses for her coldness. But today I had drawn a line in the sand, and she hadn't crossed it to meet me. She had walked the other way. The late-night crowd had finally thinned out, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than the noise. The jukebox was winding down, humming out the last few notes of a tired Springsteen track. Dancing in the dark. I think. It felt appropriate. I was moving, I was working, but I was definitely in the dark. I wiped the bar down slowly, dragging a rag across the glossy, scarred without habit more than need. My hands were moving. Spray, wipe, repeat, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. It was back in my kitchen, replaying the look on Marissa's face when I mentioned the bill, replaying the way she flinched when I touched her in bed. The kind of day I'd had? You don't shake it off with a good playlist and a well-poured IPA. It sticks to you like smoke. The bell above the door jingled once more just as I was reaching to flip the open sign to closed. I sighed, ready to tell whoever was that the taps were dry, but then I saw the silhouette. Marcus walked in, same as he did most Thursdays. Marcus, and I went back to high school. He was the kind of guy who stayed in town like I had, planted roots, and just kept growing. He ran a contracting business now, had 2 kids, a mortgage, and a hairline that was slowly retreating. Though he'd never admit it, he was solid, the kind of friend you could go 6 months without talking to, and then pick up right where you left off. He slid onto the stool closest to the register, tapped the wood twice with his knuckles, and gave me a tired smile. "Rough night?" he asked. I didn't answer immediately. I just reached for a pint glass and pulled a handle for his usual, a local stout, dark as motor oil. I slid it across the bar to him and gave the kind of shrug that said, "You don't even know the half of it." Marcus took a long sip, the foam leaving a mustache on his upper lip that he wiped away with the back of his hand. He watched me quietly for a moment. That's the thing about old friends. They read your silence better than most people read your words. "You look like hell, Logan," he said bluntly. I let out a short, dry laugh. "Thanks. I feel like it." "Business slow?" "No," I said, leaning my elbows on the bar, the damp rag dangling from my hand. "Business is fine. The bar is easy. Beer flows, people drink, they pay, they leave. It makes sense." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Meaning something else doesn't make sense?" I looked around the empty room. The chairs were overturned on the tables, casting long, leggy shadows on the floor. It was just us. I needed to say it out loud. I needed to test the reality of it against someone else's logic. "Something's changed with Marissa," I said, my voice dropping. It's like she's not in the room anymore, even when she's standing right there." Marcus swirled the stout in his glass, watching the dark liquid vortex. He didn't interrupt. "She's jumpy," I continued, the words spilling out faster now. "Hostile, secretive. I asked her a simple question yesterday morning, and she took my head off, accused me of controlling her, auditing her life. It was insane, Marcus. She looked at me like she hated me." Marcus grimaced. "Marriage is tough, man. Sarah and I go through rough patches. Sometimes it's just stress. Work, money." "It's not just stress," I insisted. I pulled my phone out of my back pocket. My thumb hovered over the banking app. I felt a pang of guilt. Was I betraying her by showing this? But the memory of her coldness pushed the guilt aside. I saw this a few days ago. I slid the phone across the polished wood. Marcus squinted at the screen. Bridgeport Women's Health. $250. He looked up, confused. "Okay." So she went to the doctor. "It's a private clinic," I said, not her usual spot. Her usual doctor is Dr. Evans, downtown. This place is way out on Bridgeport Lane. It's discreet. High-end. Marcus stared at the screen again, processing. Did you ask her about it? That's what started the fight, I said, taking the phone back. I just asked what the bill was for. She lost it. She turned it around on me so fast my head spun. Said I was trying to catch her doing something. Marcus shifted uncomfortably on the stool, running a hand over the rough stubble on his jaw. He looked down at his beer, then back at me. His expression had shifted from casual concern to something more alert. That's not good, he admitted. I didn't even accuse her of anything, I muttered, staring at the screen of my phone until it went black. I asked if she was okay. I thought maybe she was sick, and she bit my head off. Then she shut down. Cold. Shut me out completely. Marcus hesitated. He took another drink, longer this time, stalling. Then he laughed under his breath, a tight, awkward sound that didn't fit the room. What? I asked, irritated. He shook his head, looking at the coasters stacked neatly by his elbow. It's just, look. Don't take this the wrong way. What? My wife, he began carefully. Sarah. She got weird like that a few years ago. The mood swings, the snapping at me for breathing too loud, the weird paranoid stuff about me watching her. I froze. My hands gripped the edge of the bar. And, Marcus shrugged. She was pregnant with our second. Hormones, man. They mess with your head. She felt sick. She was scared. She was emotional. She didn't tell me for 3 weeks because she wanted to make sure it stuck. The word hung in the air between us. Pregnant. It hit me like a drop of black ink in a glass of clear water. It swirled, expanded, and colored everything instantly. I leaned back slowly, the rag falling from my hand onto the floor. You think she's pregnant? Marcus held up both hands in a surrender motion. I didn't say that. I'm just saying the clinic, the mood swings, the secrecy. If she is, maybe she's just scared to tell you. Maybe she wants to surprise you, or she's worried about complications. I stared at him, feeling the blood drain from my face. Marcus didn't know the whole story. He didn't know the nights I'd spent holding Marissa while she cried in the bathroom. He didn't know about the calendar we used to keep on the fridge, marked with ovulation cycles and appointment times. Marcus, I said, my voice sounding hollow to my own ears. We've been trying for over 2 years. Hard. Specialists timing everything. Marcus softened. I know, man. She stopped mentioning it 6 months ago. I said. She took the calendar down. She said she needed a break. I figured she gave up. We haven't been careful, but we haven't been trying either. If she was pregnant, God, that would be everything we wanted. So maybe that's it, Marcus said, trying to be optimistic. Maybe she's terrified of jinxing it. Maybe she went to this fancy clinic to get a confirmation before she got your hopes up. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to picture Marissa walking into the kitchen tomorrow with a onesie and a positive test, crying happy tears, explaining that her anger was just fear of losing the baby. But the math didn't add up in my gut. If she is, I said quietly, she didn't tell me. She treated me like an enemy for asking about a doctor's visit. She looked at me with resentment. Marcus. Not fear. Resentment. Marcus nodded slowly, his voice dropping to match the gravity of the room. That means something. It means she's hiding it, I said. And if she's hiding a pregnancy, why? Marcus didn't answer. He finished his beer in silence, the glass clinking softly as he set it down. You need to find out the truth, he said finally. Don't accuse her. Just find out. Because if she is pregnant, you have a right to know. And if she's not... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Yeah, I said. If she's not... Thanks for the beer, Marcus said, standing up and clapping a heavy hand on my shoulder. He squeezed it once, a gesture of solidarity. Let me know, all right? Whatever happens. I will. I watched him walk out. The door chimed, a lonely sound in the empty bar. I was alone again. I closed the register, counting down the drawer with mechanical precision. 20s, 10s, 5s, 1s. But my mind was racing. Pregnant. The word replayed in my head like a chant. I thought about the last few months. The distance. The late nights she claimed were staff meetings. The way she'd recoil if I touched her stomach. If Marcus was right and she was pregnant, why go to a clinic across town? Why pay out of a joint account but hope I wouldn't notice? Why attack me for asking? Unless, the thought crept in uninvited and ugly, unless she wasn't sure who the father was. I slammed the cash drawer shut, hard enough to make the glasses rattle on the shelf. No, I wouldn't go there. Not yet. That was a poison pill, and if I swallowed it, there was no coming back. Marissa loved me. We were struggling, sure, but she wasn't that person. She wasn't a liar. I flicked off the overhead lights one by one, letting the room dim down to shadows and the neon glow of the beer signs. Outside, the October wind was kicking leaves down the sidewalk, scraping them against the concrete. I put on my coat and stood at the door for a moment, looking out at the street lamp flickering on the corner. My car was parked around back. I dreaded the drive home. I dreaded the silence of the house, the cold side of the bed, the woman sleeping there who felt like a stranger. I pulled my keys out, the metal biting into my palm. Bridgeport Women's Health. I whispered to the empty room. I wasn't going to sleep tonight. And tomorrow morning, I wasn't going to make breakfast. I was going to find out what was behind those doors. Marcus was right about one thing. The truth was the only thing that mattered now, even if it broke me. I locked the door, flipped the collar of my jacket up against the wind, and walked into the night. My mind wasn't on the bar anymore. It was on a quiet clinic across town, a woman I no longer recognized, and a possibility I wasn't ready to name. The next morning, the sky was a flat, slate gray, hanging low over the city like a wet wool blanket. I sat in my car, engine idling, parked across the street from the address listed on the bank statement, Bridgeport Women's Health. It was a low, unassuming brick building nestled between a chiropractic office and a yoga studio. There was nothing suspicious about it. No dark windows, no back alley entrance. Just a soft blue sign with a stylized lotus flower logo. It looked ordinary. Safe, even. It was the kind of place you'd drive past 1,000 times without glancing at, a place where people went to fix problems or start families. I stared at that sign for a full 5 minutes before I could make my legs move. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a script. I just had a rising, gnawing need for truth, a truth I couldn't seem to ask Marissa for anymore. The trust that used to be the foundation of our marriage felt like it had turned into sand, shifting under my feet every time I tried to stand on it. I killed the engine. The silence in the car was deafening. Just go in, I told myself. Just ask. I stepped out into the chill. The wind was biting, cutting through my jacket, but my palms were sweating. I walked across the parking lot, scanning the cars. Was her sedan here? No, but she could have been dropped off. She could be inside right now. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, and I was hit with a wall of warm air that smelled like lavender and lemon antiseptic. It was too clean, too quiet. Soft instrumental music played from unseen speakers. Some generic piano, tune meant to keep your heart rate down. A potted plant sat in the corner by the window, its leaves glossy and perfect. Behind a high, curved reception desk, a young woman looked up. She was wearing floral scrubs and a headset. She smiled politely, but her eyes did a quick sweep of me. Jeans, work boots, tired eyes, and the smile tightened just a fraction. "Hi there," she said, her voice bright and professional. "Can I help you?" I walked slowly to the counter, resting my hands on the cool laminate. I tried to look like a normal husband, a supportive husband, not a man who felt like he was investigating a crime scene. "Yeah," I said, clear my throat. "I'm trying to confirm a visit. My wife, Marissa Holt? I think she might have been here earlier this week. Or maybe she has an appointment today." The receptionist's fingers hovered over her keyboard. Her expression softened, but not in a comforting way. It was a look you give a child who asks for candy before dinner. It was a here we go again kind of look. "I'm really sorry, sir," she said gently, "but due to HIPAA regulations and our own privacy policy, We cannot confirm or deny whether a patient has been seen here. We can't release any patient information without written consent, even of family members. I gripped the counter a little tighter. I get that. Totally. I'm not asking for her medical records. I'm not asking for test results. I'm just trying to confirm if she came in. That's it. I'm her husband. She shook her head, a practiced motion. I understand, Mr. Holt, but even confirming her presence qualifies as protected health information. I wish I could help. I stood there a moment longer, staring at her. I hoped she might read something in my face, my confusion, my desperation, the exhaustion of 2 nights without real sleep, and bend the rules just slightly. Maybe a nod, maybe a glance at a schedule. But she didn't. She just held that smile. Kind, firm, unyielding. Right, I said, my voice rough. I backed away slowly. I understand. Take care. You too, she offered. I turned and walked out. The door slid shut behind me, sealing the secrets back inside. Outside, the cold slapped me in the face again. I leaned against the hood of my car, scanning the glass facade of the clinic. I wondered how many other men had stood in this parking lot, wondering what was happening inside. You can't unknow certain thoughts once they arrive. Marcus's voice was echoing in my head. Maybe she's pregnant. I looked at the building. If she was pregnant, there was no reason to hide it. We had wanted this. We had prayed for this. Unless the math didn't work. That was the thought I had been pushing down since last night. The thought that felt like betrayal just to think. But standing there in the cold, I let it surface. We had tried for 2 years. Every test, every calendar. I went to every appointment with her. And somewhere in the mess of hope and disappointment, she had stopped looking me in the eye when we talked about it. 6 months ago, she said she wanted to stop trying. She said it was too much pressure. So if she was pregnant now, I pushed off the hood of the car, feeling sick. I got back in the driver's seat and sat with my hands gripping the wheel until my knuckles turned white. Part of me wanted to call her right now, confront her, scream, I'm at the clinic, Marissa, tell me what's going on. But what would I say? Hi, honey, I stalked your bank statement and drove to a clinic you never told me about because I think you're lying to me? No, that wasn't how this played out. If I confronted her now, she'd just gaslight me again. She'd call me controlling. She'd say I was crazy. She'd make me the villain. And whatever truth she was hiding would be buried even deeper. I needed proof. So I tried another route. I pulled out my phone. My buddy, Derek, worked IT for one of the major hospital networks in the area. We played poker twice a month for nearly 4 years. He owed me a favor or two, and he had access to systems I didn't understand. I shot him a message. Just simple. Hey, man. Weird question. Think you could help me track a patient visit at Bridgeport Women's Health? Name's Marissa Holt. Just want to know the appointment date. Nothing sensitive. Just a date. I watched the screen. 3 dots pulsed, then vanished, then pulsed again. I held my breath. Then came the reply. Logan, man, I can't. That place is private. It's not part of the Ohio Health or Mount Carmel networks. It's totally separate. Independent servers. Off the grid. Sorry. Dead end. Of course. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. It bounced once and landed face down. The truth was behind too many locked doors, and the women holding the keys refused to speak. I sat there, engine running, watching people come and go. Women in expensive coats and scarves, holding small folders or clutching their stomachs. Some looked happy. Some looked devastated. All of them walked with intention. And I felt completely outside of it all. Not just outside the clinic. Outside my marriage. Outside the answers. Outside the life I thought I understood. I'd always believed truth had a way of surfacing. That time, patience, and kindness would pull it into the light. But today I learned that truth can hide behind small smiles, privacy laws, and laminated reception signs. And no matter how gently you knock, some doors just don't open. Not until they're forced to. I put the car in gear and drove away. I didn't go back to the bar. I just drove. Aimless circles around the city. killing time, dreading the moment I had to go home. When I finally pulled into the driveway that evening, the sun had long since set. The porch light was already on. That stopped me. That never used to happen. We were the kind of couple who left lights off to save money, letting the darkness settle until one of us made it home to flip the switch. But tonight, the house was lit up like a beacon, like someone was expecting company. I walked up the steps, key in hand, feeling a strange tension in my chest. The second I opened the door, it hit me. The smell, roasted garlic, fresh rosemary, tomatoes simmering on a stove, and music, soft jazz, Coltrane, I think, drifting from the living room. It was the kind of playlist Marissa only played during dinner parties or apology nights. I stepped inside, closing the door quietly. Marissa? She was in the kitchen. She was wearing one of those aprons she never wore, a navy blue one with little gold buttons, tied neatly around her waist. Her hair was curled softly, bouncing as she moved. Her makeup was fresh, eyes bright, lips painted a soft pink. She looked up from the stove and smiled. "Hey, babe," she said. Her voice was light, musical, like nothing had ever been wrong, like yesterday hadn't happened. I froze at the threshold, coat still on. The contrast was jarring. This was a woman who, 24 hours ago, had looked at me with pure disdain. Now, she looked like a 1950s housewife in a magazine ad. "Hey," I replied carefully, watching her. "I made dinner," she said cheerfully, turning back to stir a pot of sauce. "Pasta with that spicy vodka sauce you like, and I'd baked some bread. Figured you'd be starving after your shift." I hung my coat up, my movements slow and deliberate. The table was set, cloth napkins folded into triangles, candles lit, 2 tall tapers flickering in the center. It was too much, too fast. I took a seat, watching her move around the kitchen with easy grace, humming under her breath. "You okay?" I asked. I didn't try to hide the suspicion in my tone. She looked up, startled, as if the question was absurd. "Yeah? Why wouldn't I be?" "Because yesterday you couldn't stand the sound of me eating toast," I said. She waved a hand dismissively, laughing a little. "Oh, stop. I was just cranky. Morning mood. You know how I get." She brought the plates over. Steaming pasta, perfectly garnished. She poured 2 glasses of red wine, expensive stuff, a bottle we'd been saving. We ate in silence for a while. She filled the space with little stories. Something about a patient who brought in cupcakes to the dental office. A co-worker who quit on short notice to move to Florida. Nothing deep, all surface. I nodded and chewed, but I was listening to what wasn't being said. No mention of the bill. No mention of the fight. No mention of the distance. No mention of where she was earlier this week. It was a performance. I realized it with a sinking feeling in my gut. This wasn't her trying to reconnect. This was distraction. This was love bombing. She was trying to bury the tension under layers of garlic and good wine. She wanted me fat, happy, and asking no questions. After dinner, she cleared the plates. "Leave them," she said when I stood up to help. "I got it." She poured us more wine and led me upstairs. It felt like a regular Thursday night from 3 years ago, like we hadn't been enemies in a Cold War for a week. We undressed in the familiar hush of routine. The bedroom was dark, save for the streetlights filtering through the sheer curtains. She climbed into bed first, sliding close to me. Her skin was warm. Her fingers grazed my shoulder, then trailed down my arm. "Come here," she whispered. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling. She kissed my neck, lightly, slow and deliberate. Then her hand slid to my chest, her palm flat against my heart. She was trying to initiate. She was trying to use intimacy to bridge the gap she had created. I caught her wrist gently. I stopped her hand. "Marissa," I said. My voice was soft, but it was a wall. She paused. "What?" "I'm tired," I said. "Long shift." She went still. Her hand hovered in midair before withdrawing. "Oh," she said. Her voice was too light, too breezy. "Of course. Sorry. Just missed you." "Yeah," I said, I'm going to sleep. I turned onto my side, facing the wall. She curled up behind me after a moment, resting her hand on my back. I didn't shrug it off, but I didn't reach for her either, because I wasn't falling for it. She wasn't reaching for me. She was reaching for control. She wanted to know if she still had me. She wanted to know if a nice dinner and a little affection were enough to make me forget the Bridgeport Clinic. She was calibrating. She was testing the fences to see if I was still contained. And tonight, I gave her nothing. Long after her breathing slowed and evened out, I stared into the dark, my eyes wide, my heart beating steady and hard against my ribs. This wasn't forgiveness. This wasn't healing. This was strategy. And now I knew she wasn't going to tell me the truth. Not willingly. Not until she had no other choice. But I had already made mine. From this moment forward, I wouldn't chase. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't break. Let her lie in peace. Let her think she had smoothed it over with pasta and wine. I would find the truth in silence. And I knew exactly where to look next. I didn't want to bring anyone else into this. For days, I told myself that this was between me and Marissa. Our marriage, our secrets, our mess. You don't go running to the in-laws when the boat starts taking on water. You grab a bucket and you bail. That's the code. You protect the dignity of the relationship until there's nothing left to protect. But when someone hides that deep, when they bury the truth under layers of silence and pasta dinners, you have to look where the light might still reach. You have to find the weak link in the chain. So, on Saturday afternoon, I drove across town to the little brick duplex where her sister lived. Elena, Marissa's younger sister by 3 years. She was a kindergarten teacher with a bright smile, soft eyes, and a chaotic, warm energy that was a complete opposite of Marissa's polished control. Elena had always been the peacemaker, the one who diffused attention at Thanksgiving, the one who remembered everyone's birthdays. We were close, not in a weird way, just in a brother-sister way. She trusted me, and I absolutely knew, that if Marissa was going to tell anyone the truth, it would be Elena. I parked on the street. It was a gray afternoon, the kind where the clouds looked like bruised knuckles ready to punch the horizon. I sat in the car for a moment, watching a stray cat pick its way along the neighbor's fence. I felt like a traitor. Walking up to that door felt like crossing a line I could never uncross. But the image of that Bridgeport Women's Health charge was burned into my retinas. I couldn't live in the gray anymore. I knocked. Elena opened the door almost immediately, like she'd been standing on the other side waiting. She was wearing sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, hair in a messy bun. "Logan?" "Hey," I said, keeping my hands jammed deep in my coat pockets to hide the fact that they were shaking. "Can I come in?" She hesitated. It was brief, a flicker of the eyes, a tightening of the jaw, but I saw it. She didn't want me there. Not today. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know before I even stepped over the threshold. "Yeah," she said, stepping aside. "Of course. Come in." The living room was warm. It smelled like cinnamon and dryer sheets, that specific, cozy scent of home that isn't trying to impress anyone. A kid's movie was paused on the TV. A freeze frame of a cartoon dragging mid-flight. A basket of folded laundry sat on the couch. It was so normal, so peaceful. It made the chaos inside my head feel 10 times louder. "You want coffee? Or water?" she asked, hovering by the kitchen archway. She looked nervous. Her fingers were picking at the sleeve of her hoodie. "No," I said gently. "I just need to talk." She nodded, swallowed hard, and sat down on the edge of the armchair. She didn't lean back. She sat perched on the edge, arms crossed tightly over her chest, like she was bracing herself for impact. "Elena," I began. I kept my voice low, steady. I wasn't here to interrogate her. I was here to beg. "I think you know something, and I think it's been eating at you." She didn't respond. She just stared at her folded hands, her knuckles turning white. The silence of the room thickened, heavy and suffocating. "I'm not here to corner you," I said, stepping a little closer. "I'm not angry at you, but I need the truth, Elena, because I'm not getting it anywhere else. Marissa she's walled me out. She's acting like I'm the enemy. And I feel like I'm going crazy. Her lip trembled slightly. She took a long, shaky breath, but she didn't look up. I told her not to drag it out, she whispered. The words were so quiet I almost missed them. I felt my stomach drop. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I told her the longer she lied, the worse it would get, she continued, her voice gaining a little more strength, though it was wet with unshed tears. Elena, I said, sinking onto the sofa opposite her. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. Is Marissa pregnant? She froze. Then, slowly, she nodded once. She looked up, her eyes glassy and red-rimmed. Yes. The word hung in the air. Yes. My throat closed up, even though I had suspected it, even though Marcus had said it. Hearing it out loud was different. It made it real. It took it from a paranoid theory to a physical fact. I sat back, feeling the air leave my lungs. She didn't tell me, I said quietly. Not a word. We've been trying for years. Elena, why would she hide it? Elena looked away, biting her lip. She looked miserable, absolutely wretched. She's scared, Logan. She's not scared, I said, my jaw tightening. The anger was starting to bleed through the shock. She's strategic. She's been picking fights, avoiding me, gaslighting me about bank charges. Why would she do that if it was good news? Unless... Elena blinked slowly, tears spilling over onto her cheeks. I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't have to. The silence screamed the answer. She doesn't know who the father is, Elena whispered. She said it like the words themselves were fragile, like they might shatter if she spoke them too loud. Everything stopped. The clock ticking on the wall, the hum of the fridge, the traffic outside. It all just stopped. I stared at her. What? I'm sorry, she said quickly, her voice rising in panic. I didn't mean for it to come out like that. She told me a few weeks ago. She said it was an accident, a mistake, some guy from work. It wasn't serious, Logan. It was just a thing that happened. I stared at the floor. The pattern on the rug was a series of interlocking diamonds. I focused on one blue diamond, trying to anchor myself to the earth. Did she say when? I asked. My voice sounded robotic, distant. No, just that it happened once. She thought it would pass. She thought it was nothing. Then she missed her period. I closed my eyes, and she decided to pretend everything was normal. She didn't know what to do, Elena pleaded, defending her sister out of habit. She was panicking. She said she wanted to keep the baby, but she also didn't want to lose you. She loves you, Logan. She really does. She loves me. I let out a harsh, dry laugh. Elena, listen to yourself. She cheated on me. She got pregnant. And instead of telling me, she came home and made me dinner. She tried to sleep with me last night. Elena flinched. She thought she could. Elena trailed off, looking horrifyingly uncomfortable. Wait it out, I finished for her. The realization washed over me like ice water. She was trying to sleep with me so the timeline would blur. She wanted to let me think it was mine. Elena didn't deny it. She just cried harder, burying her face in her hands. I told her it was wrong, she sobbed into her palms. I told her she couldn't lie about something like that it wasn't fair. I told her she had to tell you. She was going to let me raise someone else's child. I murmured. I was speaking more to myself than to her now. She was going to let me sign the birth certificate, change the diapers, love it, raise it, all while knowing every time she looked at me that she was lying. That was the knife. The affair? Okay, people screw up. People get lonely. It hurts, it burns, but it's human weakness. But this was calculation. This was a trap. She wasn't just breaking my heart. She was planning to steal my life. She was going to construct a reality around me that was fundamentally false, and let me live in it until I died. I stood up slowly. My legs felt heavy, like they were made of lead. Elena, I said quietly. She looked up, her face streaked with mascara. She looked like a child who had broken a vase. Thank you, I said. She blinked, confused. What? Thank you for telling me. Because she never would have. Are you? She swallowed. Are you going to leave her? I didn't answer, not with words. I just looked at her. The answer was written in the set of my jaw, in the deadness of my eyes. I nodded once. Slow, solemn. Please don't tell her I told you, Elena said suddenly, panic flaring in her eyes again. She'll never speak to me again. She'll hate me. I paused at the door, my hand on the brass knob. I won't, I said over my shoulder. You didn't betray her, Elena. She betrayed me. You just turned on the lights. I walked out. Outside, the wind had picked up. It bit my face, sharp and bitter, stinging my eyes. But I welcomed it. It felt real. I walked to my car with a stillness I hadn't felt in days. There was no need to shout anymore. No need to argue over toast or bank bills. No more begging for answers in the dark. The confusion was gone. The what-ifs were gone. Now I knew. I sat in the driver's seat, but I didn't start the car immediately. I watched the house. I thought about Marissa. I thought about the woman I married 5 years ago in a small chapel by the lake. I thought about the vows, to have and to hold, for better, for worse. I wondered if she thought about those vows when she was with him. I wondered if she thought about them when she looked me in the eye and lied about the clinic. I gripped the steering wheel. I wasn't a storm home. I wasn't an explode. That's what the old Logan would have done. The Logan who thought this was a fight about communication. But this wasn't a fight. This was a war, and she had already launched the first nuclear strike. I needed to be smart. She had a strategy? Fine. Now I had one too. She doesn't know who the father is. I whispered to the empty car. But I knew something she didn't. I knew something that would end this argument before it even started. It was a piece of information I hadn't thought about in years. Something buried in a medical file from way back when we first started trying. I started the engine. Tomorrow, I wouldn't go to the bar. I wouldn't go to work. Tomorrow, I was going to take the final step. I was going to get the one thing that trumps a lie every single time. Science. I put the car in gear and drove away from Elena's house, leaving the warmth behind, driving straight into the cold, hard truth. The next morning, I woke before the sun. The house was silent, wrapped in that gray, pre-dawn stillness that usually feels peaceful. I used to love this time of day. It was the only time the world felt manageable, before the traffic started, before the bar opened, before the bills came due. But today, the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt empty. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving a vacuum where a marriage used to be. I lay in bed for a moment, listening to the rhythm of Marissa's breathing beside me. In, out, in, out. It was so steady, so calm. How do you sleep like that when you're carrying a grenade in your womb? How do you close your eyes and rest when you're actively dismantling the life of the person lying next to you? I carefully slid out from under the covers, not because I was worried about waking her, but because I couldn't stand proximity anymore. Her body heat felt like radiation. I went downstairs, moving like a ghost in my own home. I stood at the kitchen table, staring at the coffee maker, but I didn't turn it on. I didn't want the noise. I didn't want the smell. I just wanted clarity. Elena's words from yesterday were looping in my head like a skipping record, relentless and sharp. She doesn't know who the father is. She's scared. She thought she could wait it out. I should have felt fury. I should have been throwing things, screaming, waking her up to demand a confession right then and there. But I didn't feel hot anger. I felt a cold, clinical detachment. When you live with someone long enough, you start recognizing the sound of lies, not by what they say, but by what they suddenly stop saying. And now that I had the key, the pregnancy, every locked door in my mind suddenly swung open. The mood swings, the headaches, the sudden aversion to intimacy followed by the desperate attempt to initiate it. It all made perfect, sickening sense. By 9 a.m., I wasn't at the bar. I was parked outside a clinic. Not hers. Not Bridgeport Women's Health. I was at a place I hadn't visited in over 2 years. Back when we were still hopeful. Back when we were a team. Central Ohio Reproductive Health. The sign hadn't changed. It was still that muted green lettering, professional and discreet. I sat in my truck, staring at it through the windshield. I remembered the last time I was here. I remembered holding Marissa's hand in the waiting room, squeezing it tight, telling her, whatever it is, we'll figure it out. We never did figure out. We just stopped. The test got expensive. The results were inconclusive or borderline. An emotional toll got too heavy. She pulled away first, saying we needed a break. I agreed, thinking I was giving her space. Now I realized I had just given her an exit ramp. I walked inside. The smell of the waiting room hit me instantly. Old magazines and sanitized anxiety. The nurse behind the desk looked up. She was older, with kind eyes behind rimless glasses. Can I help you? I need a fertility check, I said. My voice was steady, void of emotion, urgent. I'm willing to pay out of pocket for same-day results if that's possible. She blinked, surprised by my intensity. Are you a previous patient? Logan Holt, I said. I was here 2 years ago. She typed my name in, her eyes scanning the screen. Ah, yes, Mr. Holt. We have your file. She looked up, hesitating. Is your wife joining you today? No, I said. Just me. I need to know my status. Today. She didn't ask why. She didn't need to. In a place like this, desperation is a standard currency. She just nodded, handed me a clipboard, and pointed me toward the back. It took less than an hour. Paperwork, a sample, a brief and awkward conversation with a technician who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Then the promise. The doctor will review the analysis and call you by early afternoon. When I walked out of there, the air outside felt cold enough to sting. It was a sharp, crisp autumn day, the kind where the sky is painfully blue. I walked to my truck, sat behind the wheel, and just breathed. I didn't drive away immediately. I sat there, hands on the wheel, watching my breath fog the glass. I was playing a dangerous game. I knew that. There was a tiny, microscopic chance that the results would come back normal, that I was fine, that I could be the father. But deep down, I knew we had tried for 2 years. No protection, rigid timing, ovulation kits, and nothing happened, not once. Statistically, that doesn't just happen by bad luck. One of us was a problem. And knowing Marissa, knowing her health, her history, I had always suspected it was me. I just never had the guts to confirm it because I was afraid of the answer. I was afraid of feeling like less of a man. Now, I was praying for it. I was sitting in a parking lot, begging the universe to tell me I was sterile. Because if I was sterile, then the baby growing inside my wife was undeniable proof of her betrayal. It was the smoking gun. It was the period at the end of the sentence. I drove around for hours. I couldn't go home, and I couldn't go to work. I went to a park near the river and sat on a bench, watching the water rush by, gray and choppy. I watched the father teaching his son how to skip stones. The kid was terrible at it, just splashing rocks into the mud, but the dad was laughing, patient, guiding his arm. It twisted something inside my chest, a sharp, physical pain. That was what I wanted. That was all I wanted. By 2 p.m., my phone rang. The screen said unknown caller. I answered on the first ring. This is Logan. Mr. Holt. The voice was clinical, deep. It was Dr. Aris, the specialist I'd seen briefly years ago. Yeah, I'm here. We received your results from the lab analysis this morning. My hand tightened on the phone. Okay, I have to inform you. The results are significant. He paused, probably looking for a gentle way to say it. Doctors are trained to break bad news softly, but I didn't want soft. I wanted hard facts. Just tell me, document. Your sample shows azoospermia, he said. Essentially a 0 sperm count. There are no viable sperm present in the sample. I closed my eyes. The wind off the river brushed against my face. Is that new? I asked, could it have just happened? Unlikely, Dr. Aris said. Looking at your hormonal markers and the history in your file, this looks congenital, Mr. Holt. It's likely been this way your entire life. I'm sorry. Conception through natural means isn't just unlikely. It is physically impossible. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. Impossible I repeated. Yes, I know this is difficult news to hear. No, I cut him off. My voice was terrifyingly calm. Thank you, doctor. Can you email me a PDF of that report? Right now? Yes, of course. We can send it via the secure portal. Do it, I said. Thank you. I hung up. I sat there on that bench for a long time. It's a strange thing, getting the worst news of your life and feeling like you just won the lottery. Physically impossible. That was it. That was the nail in the coffin. I felt a wave of grief wash over me, deeper and darker than I expected. I would never be a father, not biologically. That dream, the one where I saw my own eyes in a kid's face, died right there on that park bench. I let myself feel it for exactly 1 minute. I let the weight of it crush me, and then I shoved it aside. I locked it in a box to deal with later. Right now, I didn't have time to mourn my fertility. I had a trap to spring. All the confusion of the last week, the gaslighting, the you're crazy, the you're controlling, I have a headache, it all lined up perfectly. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't insecurity. It was truth hiding in plain sight. She was pregnant, and I was sterile. There was no gray area. There was no maybe, unless she believed in immaculate conception. She was carrying another man's child and trying to pin it on me to save her lifestyle. I pulled at my contacts and dialed Daniel. Daniel was an old friend, a shark of a lawyer who usually handled contracts at the bar, but I knew he did family law too. Logan, he answered, sounding surprised. Everything good? No, I said. Dan, I need you to draft divorce documents. Fast. And I need them airtight. He went quiet. Whoa. You and Marissa? Logan, are you sure? You guys are like the poster couple. I need them today, Dan, I said, ignoring the comment. Infidelity. Irreconcilable differences. And I need a specific clause about paternity. Paternity? She's pregnant, I said coldly. And I just got off the phone with a doctor who confirmed I can't have kids. You do the math. Oh, Daniel breathed. Oh, shit. Logan, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Just be fast. Can you have the papers ready to sign if I come by in an hour? For you? Yeah. I'll clear my afternoon. Come straight to the office. Understood. When I hung up, I looked out across the park one last time. Families. Couples holding hands. Strangers living their ordinary, honest lives. I stood up, brushing a dead leaf off my jeans. For the first time in days, I felt steady. Not angry. Not broken. Just done. The doubt was gone. The love. That was a complicated, bleeding mess, but the trust? The trust was incinerated. I walked back to my truck. The engine roared to life, a growl that matched the feeling in my chest. I was going to go see Daniel. I was going to get the paperwork. And then I was going to go home and eat dinner. I was going to let her play her little game one last time. I was going to let her smile and serve dessert and pretend we were fixing things. And when she felt safe, when she thought she had successfully maneuvered me back into her web, I was going to show her the difference between a suspicion and a fact. She wanted to write the story of our family. Fine. But she forgot one thing. You can't write a story when you don't control the ending. And tonight, I was writing the ending. She made dessert. That's how I knew. The second I walked in the door, that tonight was a night she had chosen to spin her narrative. We weren't dessert people. Not on a Tuesday. Not after a work day. Maybe a bowl of ice cream on a Saturday night while watching a movie. But not this. There she was, standing in the kitchen, framed by the soft under-cabinet lighting. On the counter sat a plate of chocolate lava cake, steam still rising from the center, with 2 perfect scoops of vanilla bean ice cream melting slowly on the side. She looked up as I entered. She was wearing that smile again, the one that didn't reach her eyes, the one that was tight at the corners. It was a smile made of fear and foundation. "Hey," she said, her voice dropping an octave. Trying to sound seductive or comforting, I couldn't tell which. I thought we deserved a treat. I hung my coat up, feeling the weight of the manila folder in my inside pocket. It pressed against my ribs like a concealed weapon. Lava cake, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Fancy. I just wanted tonight to be nice, she said, picking up the plate. Come sit. I walked to the table. I sat down. I watched her place the dessert between us with 2 forks. It was a peace offering. It was a bribe. It was a distraction. I played along. I picked up my fork and took a small bite. The chocolate was rich, cloying, sticking to the roof of my mouth. I swallowed it down, fighting the urge to gag. It's good, I said. She watched me eat, her eyes scanning my face for any sign of softening. She waited until I'd had a few bites, until the sugar hit my bloodstream, before she set her own fork down. She did it carefully, aligning it perfectly with the edge of the napkin, like the placement of the silverware could somehow stabilize the conversation she was about to start. Logan, she said softly, we need to talk. I set my fork down, mirroring her movement. Okay. She took a deep breath. I could see the pulse jumping in her throat. This was it. She was rehearsing the lines in her head. The script she had probably written and rewritten all day while I was sitting on a park bench mourning a child I'd never have. I've been off lately, she began. I know you've noticed. I know I've been distant and snappy, and I treated you unfairly the other day about the bill. I nodded, saying nothing. I let the silence stretch, forcing her to fill it. I've been scared to tell you why, she continued, her eyes filling with tears that looked genuine. Maybe they were. Fear makes people cry just as hard as sadness does. I didn't know how you'd take it, because I know we stopped trying a while ago, and I know it's been hard on us, but you deserve the truth. She reached across the table, her hand creeping toward mine. I didn't pull away, but I didn't turn my palm up to meet hers. I let her hand rest on my knuckles, cold and trembling. I'm pregnant, she whispered. She paused, waiting. It was a dramatic pause, the kind used in movies when the music swells. She was waiting for the shock, then the joy, then the embrace. She was waiting for me to leap up and swing her around the kitchen. I tilted my head slightly, studying her face. I looked for a crack in performance, a sign of guilt, but there was nothing, just a desperate, pleading hope. Pregnant, I repeated flatly. She squeezed my hand. Yes, I went to the clinic to confirm it. That's what the bill was. I wanted to be sure before I told you. I wanted to surprise you, but then I got scared because we gave up. But Logan, this is a miracle. A miracle, I echoed. Yes, don't you see? She laughed, a wet, choked sound. After everything, it just happened. It's our baby. The words hung in the air between us. Our baby. That was the line. That was the moment she crossed from a cheater to a monster. It wasn't the sex. I could have potentially wrapped my head around a mistake, a drunken night, a moment of weakness. But this was premeditated fraud. She was looking me in the eye, knowing full well she had slept with another man, knowing she had lied about it, and she was trying to pin the consequences on me. She was banking on my love for her being blind enough to ignore biology. A strange calm settled over me. The anger evaporated, replaced by a cold, surgical precision. That's interesting, I said. I pulled my hand out from under hers. Marissa's smile faltered. The corners of her mouth twitched. What do you mean? I stood up. I walked over to my coat, hanging by the door. I could feel her eyes on my back, burning. She was confused. This wasn't in the script. I was supposed to be happy, or at least stunned. I reached into the pocket and pulled out the folder. I walked back to the table and tossed it onto the wood. It landed with a heavy slap, sliding across the polished surface until it hit the base of the lava cake plate. I went to the doctor today, too, I said. My voice was conversational, light even. Marissa stared at the folder. She didn't touch it. She looked up at me, fear dawning in her eyes. You did? Yeah, I said, leaning back against the kitchen counter, crossing my arms. I went to see Dr. Eris. Remember him? The fertility specialist we stopped seeing. Her face drained of color. It went past pale to a sickly, chalky white. I wanted to see if maybe, just maybe, we had a shot. I lied. So I ran a full panel. Paid extra for the rush results. I nodded at the folder. Open it. Logan, her voice was a whisper now, barely audible. Open it, Marissa. She reached out with a shaking hand and flipped the cover open. Her eyes scanned the page. It was a simple document, a lot of medical jargon, but the summary at the bottom was clear. Diagnosis, azoospermia. Sterility confirmed. She stared at the words. She read them once, twice, 3 times. Her brain was trying to find a loophole, a way out, a misprint. I'm sterile, I said, breaking the silence. Completely infertile. 0 count. Apparently, it's congenital. I've been that way my whole life. I couldn't get a woman pregnant if I tried for 100 years. I took a step closer to the table, looming over the wreckage of her lie. So, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, unless you believe in immaculate conception, that is someone else's baby. Marissa didn't move. She didn't breathe. She looked like a statue of a woman realizing her life was over. Then her lips parted. A sound escaped, a small, pathetic whimper. Logan, I already filed, I said calmly. I called Daniel this afternoon. The divorce papers are being drafted as we speak. He'll be in touch by the end of the week to serve you formally. She blinked fast, like she was trying to wake up from a nightmare. Wait, what? No, that's not. Logan, stop. Stop. I raised an eyebrow. You wanted to stop? You just looked me in the eye and told me a lie that would have bound me to another man's child for the rest of my life. You tried to trap me, Marissa. I didn't mean to, she screamed, finally breaking. She stood up, knocking her chair back. It clattered to the floor. This wasn't planned. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. You didn't mean to sleep with him? I asked, or you didn't mean to get caught? It was a mistake. Tears were streaming down her face now, ruining the perfect makeup she had applied for her performance. She reached across the table, grabbing for my hands, but I stepped back out of reach. I was lonely, Logan. You were always at the bar. We were drifting apart. We weren't connecting, and it just happened. It was one time. I don't care, I said. That stopped her. She froze, mouth open. What? I don't care that you slept with him, I said. I mean, it hurts. It kills me. But people screw up. If you had come home that night or the next morning and told me, if you had said, Logan, I messed up, I'm so sorry, maybe we could have talked. Maybe we could have figured it out. I pointed at the medical report. But you didn't do that. You waited. You found out you were pregnant. And instead of owning it, you decided to use it. You decided to trick me. You looked at me, knowing I wanted to be a father more than anything in the world, and you tried to use that desperation against me. I wanted to save us, she sobbed, collapsing back into her chair, burying her face in her hands. I thought if you believed it was yours, you'd be happy. I thought we could be a family. I love you, Logan. I swear I love you. That offer expired the day you lied. I said coldly. Logan, please, she gasped, looking up at me, her face a mess of mascara and snot. We can still fix this. We can raise the baby together. You wanted a child. Does biology really matter that much? If you love me, you can love this baby. I shook my head slowly, looking at her with something that felt like pity. You really don't get it, I said. It's not about biology, Marissa. It's about the fact that I can never believe a word that comes out of your mouth again. How could I? Every time I looked at that kid, I wouldn't see a son or a daughter. I would see the lie you told to keep me. No, she moaned. I'm staying at the studio apartment above the bar tonight. I said, I packed a bag while you were in the shower before dinner. I'll come by for the rest of my things when you're at work on Friday. I walked into the living room and grabbed the duffel bag I had stashed behind the couch earlier. I slung it over my shoulder. She ran after me. She grabbed my arm in the hallway, her grip desperate, nails digging into my jacket. Don't go. Logan, please, don't leave me like this. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I looked down at her hand on my arm. I gently, but firmly, peeled her fingers off. You should have thought about that before you invited another man into our marriage, I said. He's gone, she cried. He moved away. He doesn't even know. I'm all alone, Logan. You're not alone, I said, opening the front door. The cold night air rushed in, cleansing the smell of chocolate and perfume from my nose. You have your sister. And you have the truth now. It's cleaner this way. Logan, she screamed my name, a raw, guttural sound that echoed into the street. I didn't look back. I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me. I didn't slam it. I didn't yell. I just closed it. The click of the latch was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I walked to my truck, my boots crunching on the gravel. I got in, threw the bag on the passenger seat, and started the engine. As I backed out of the driveway, I looked up at the house one last time. I could see her silhouette in the window, slumped against the frame, watching me go. I expected to feel shattered. I expected to feel like my life had ended. But as I drove down the street, putting distance between me and the lie I'd been living, I realized something strange. My hands weren't shaking. My chest didn't hurt. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. The suffocation of suspicion was gone. The weight of trying to figure out what was wrong was gone. It was over. And in the silence of the truck, alone on the road, I whispered the truth to myself just to hear out loud. I'm not the father. And then I drove toward the city lights, leaving the dark house behind. The studio apartment above the bar wasn't much. It was basically a storage room with a shower and a window that wouldn't stay open unless you propped it up with a book. It smelled like dust and faintly of the hops brewing downstairs. The mattress was lumpy. The fridge hummed like a lawnmower, and the view was just a brick wall and a fire escape. But that first night, it was the best sleep I'd had in 5 years. There was no tension, no walking on eggshells, no wondering if the person next to me was happy or angry or lying. It was just me and the hum of the fridge. I woke up the next morning to a phone that looked like it was having a seizure. 47 missed calls, 32 texts. I sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, and scrolled through them. It was a fascinating case study in the stages of grief, played out in blue bubbles. Please pick up. We need to talk. I'm so sorry, Logan. Please. You're overreacting. We can fix this. Don't throw away 5 years over one mistake. Where are you? I love you. You're being cruel. Fine. If you want to leave, leave. See if I care. I didn't mean that. Please come home. I didn't reply to a single one. I didn't feel the urge to. It was like reading messages from a stranger. The woman who wrote these, the woman who thought she could bargain her way out of infidelity and paternity fraud, wasn't the woman I married. That woman died the second I opened that medical file. I got up, showered in the cramped stall, and put on the same clothes from yesterday. I had a meeting to get to. Daniel's office was on the 4th floor of a glass building downtown, the kind with polished marble floors and abstract art that cost more than my car. Daniel was waiting for me, 2 coffees already on the desk. He looked tired, like he'd been up late reading the email I sent him. You look like shit, he said affectionately as I walked in. Thanks, I said, sinking into the leather chair. I feel great, actually. Daniel leaned back, tenning his fingers. I read the medical report, Logan, and I read your notes on the timeline. He let out a low whistle. It's thorough. I mean, usually these things are messy, he said. She said, but this? You handed me a smoking gun. I want it done, Dan, I said, taking a sip of the coffee. Black, bitter. I don't want a drawn-out battle. I don't want counseling. I want a clean break. We can do that, Daniel nodded, pulling a stack of papers toward him. We're filing on grounds of adultery, obviously. But the big thing here, the thing we need to be absolutely surgical about, is the paternity. I'm sterile, I said. It's not my kid. I know that, and you know that, Daniel said, his lawyer voice clicking on. But the state of Ohio assumes that any child born during a marriage is the husband's legal responsibility. It's called the presumption of paternity. If we don't contest this aggressively, right now, you could end up on the hook for child support for 18 years, regardless of biology. I felt a cold spike in my chest. You're kidding. I wish I was. The law lags behind science sometimes. We need to file a motion to disestablish paternity immediately. We need that DNA test, or in your case, the sterility report, entered into the court record before the baby is born. We need a judge to sign a piece of paper that says explicitly, Logan Holt is not the father. Do whatever you have to do, I said. I'm not paying for the man who ruined my marriage to raise his kid. Daniel nodded, scribbling a note. I'm going to request a summary judgment. With the medical evidence you have, it should be straightforward. But Logan, Marissa is going to have to admit it. She will, I said. She knows I know. She might fight it, Daniel warned. Desperation makes people do crazy things. If she claims you consented to artificial insemination, or she tries to argue that you accepted the child. I walked out. I said, I haven't accepted anything. Good. Keep it that way. No communication. No checking in. No buying diapers just to be nice. Any act of support could be argued as acceptance of the paternal role. You are a ghost, Logan. You understand? I'm a ghost, I agreed. We spent the next hour going over assets. The house, the cars, the savings. It was depressing how easily 5 years of building a life could be reduced to a spreadsheet. Half the equity, half the debt. We were dissolving a partnership, liquidating a failed business. That's all it was now. When I left the office, the sun was high and bright. I felt lighter. The paperwork was filed. The gears were turning. It was out of my hands and into the machinery of the law. I had one last stop to make. I checked the time. 11:30 a.m. Marissa would be at the dental office. She never took lunch before 1. The house would be empty. I pulled into the driveway 20 minutes later. The house looked exactly the same as I'd left it last night, but it felt different. It didn't feel like my house anymore. It felt like a set piece from a movie I had stopped watching. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The smell hit me first. That lingering scent of vanilla and lavender. It used to comfort me. Now it just smelled like a lie. The lava cake was still on the table. 2 forks. The melted ice cream had turned into a sticky white puddle on the placemat. The cake had collapsed in on itself, a sad, hardened lump of chocolate. She hadn't cleaned it up. She must have sat there crying, or just gone to bed, leaving the mess for the morning. I walked past it. I didn't touch it. I went upstairs to the bedroom. The bed was unmade, the sheets tangled. I grabbed a suitcase from the closet and started packing. I didn't take everything. I didn't want the furniture. I didn't want the wedding photos on the dresser. I didn't want the knickknacks we'd bought on our honeymoon in Charleston. I took my clothes, my boots, my books, the watch she gave me for our first anniversary. I hesitated on that one, then threw it in the bag. I could sell it. I moved quickly, efficiently. I didn't let myself linger over memories. Oh, remember when we bought this rug? Remember when we painted this wall? No, that was torture. I focused on the task. Shirt, pants, socks, charger. I was zipping up the suitcase when I heard the garage door open. My stomach dropped. She was home early. I froze for a second, debating. Should I rush out the back? Should I lock the bedroom door? No, this was my house too. I had a right to be here. I wasn't going to hide like a burglar. I heard the door from the garage open, then her footsteps. Fast, frantic clicking of heels on hardwood. Logan, she called out, her voice echoing up the stairs. She sounded breathless, like she'd run all the way from the car. She must have seen my truck in the driveway. Logan, are you here? I picked up the suitcase and walked out into the hallway. She was standing at the bottom of the stairs. She was wearing her scrubs, her hair messy, her eyes red and puffy. When she saw me, her face crumpled with relief, then desperation. You came back, she breathed, taking a step up. I came for my things, I said. My voice was flat, echoing in the stairwell. She stopped. Your things? No. Logan, don't. We need to talk. I tried calling you all morning. I know, I said. I saw. I started walking down the stairs. She stood in the middle of the steps, blocking my path. Move, Marissa, I said gently. No, she said, grabbing the banister with both hands, planting her feet. I'm not letting you leave again. Not until you listen to me. I stopped 3 steps above her. I was taller, looming over her, but I didn't feel powerful. I just felt tired. I listened to you last night, I said. I listened to you tell me you were pregnant. I listened to you beg me to raise another man's child. There's nothing left to say. There is, she cried. I went to a lawyer this morning, too, Logan. That surprised me. Oh, yes. I wanted to see what my options were. She looked down, tears dripping onto her scrubs. He told me that if we divorce, it's going to be a mess. He told me I'm going to be alone with this baby. He gave you good advice, I said. She looked up, eyes blazing with sudden anger. How can you be so cold? You loved me yesterday. You can't just turn it off. I didn't turn it off, I said, gripping the handle of my suitcase until my knuckles turned white. You killed it. You strangled it. Marissa, you did this. Not me. I made a mistake. You made a choice, I corrected her. 1,000 choices. You chose to sleep with him. You chose to hide it. You chose to go to that clinic. You chose to lie to my face. And last night, you chose to try and trap me. I took a step down. She didn't move. Please, she whispered. I'm terrified. I can't do this alone. You should have called the father, I said. He's married, she blurted out. The words hung in the air. I stared at her. He's married. She covered her mouth, realizing she'd said too much. But it was too late. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. So that's why, I said, shaking my head in disbelief. That's why you couldn't tell him. That's why you needed me. I wasn't just a backup plan, Marissa. I was a cover story. Logan, get out of my way, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was dangerous. It was the voice of a man who had absolutely nothing left to lose. She saw something in my eyes then. Maybe it was a finality. Maybe it was a realization that her tears, the weapon she had used for years to soften me, were bouncing off harmlessly. She slowly stepped aside, pressing her back against the wall, sobbing quietly. I walked past her. I didn't look at her. I felt the heat of her body as I passed, but I didn't flinch. I walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped out into the sun. I filed the papers, Marissa. I called back without turning around. My lawyer will be in touch. I walked to the truck, threw the suitcase in back, and got in. As I drove away, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I knew what was back there. A house that was no longer a home. A woman who was no longer my wife. And a life that I had just narrowly escaped. I was alone. I was broke. I was living in a storage room. But as I merged on the highway, heading back toward the bar, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. Freedom. It tasted like bitter coffee and cold air, but it was mine, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me again. Living above a bar sounds romantic in a gritty, Tom Waits song kind of way. You imagine late nights writing poetry by neon light, the comforting hum of conversation drifting through the floorboards. The reality is less poetic. The reality is that the bass from the jukebox vibrates your coffee cup at 11 p.m. The reality is a smell of stale beer and fryer grease that seeps into your clothes, your sheets, your pores. The reality is listening to the keg delivery truck backing into the alley at 6 a.m., the reverse beeping piercing your brain like an ice pick. But for the first few days, I loved every noisy, smelly second of it. The noise was a distraction. The vibration of the floorboards meant I wasn't alone, even if I was solitary. It was better than the silence of the house on Bridgeport Lane. That silence had been filled with unsaid words and suffocating secrets. The noise here? It was honest. It was just life, loud and messy. I settled into a routine quickly. Wake up, shower in the closet-sized bathroom, go downstairs, prep the bar, work the lunch rush, handle inventory, work the dinner rush, close up, go upstairs, sleep. Repeat. I kept my phone on silent. The messages from Marissa had slowed down, shifting from desperate pleading to angry paragraphs about abandonment and duty. I didn't read past the first few words. I archived them all. Evidence for Daniel, not reading material for me. But you can't hide forever, especially not in a town where you know half the population. It was Wednesday night. 3 days after I moved out. The bar was humming. A good crowd for a weeknight. I was pulling a draft for a regular when the door opened, and the atmosphere at the near end of the bar shifted instantly. Jessica walked in. Jessica was Marissa's best friend since college. She was fierce, loyal to a fault, and currently looked like she wanted to vault over the counter and strangle me with her scarf. I sighed, setting the beer down. I knew this was coming. The flying monkeys. That's what they call them in therapy circles, right? The people the narcissist sends to do their bidding, armed with a twisted version of the story. Jessica marched up to the bar, slamming her purse down on a stool. She didn't sit. She stood, glaring at me. "A whiskey," she snapped. "Double." I poured it. "Neat." I slid across to her. "On the house, Jess." She didn't drink it. She just stared at me, her eyes narrow and accusing. "You look like shit, Logan." "I've been better," I admitted, wiping down the counter. "How are you?" "How am I?" She laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound. "I'm furious. I'm over at your house, trying to comfort a pregnant woman who has cried her eyes out because her husband walked out on her without a word." I stopped wiping. I leaned against the back bar, crossing my arms. I didn't walk out without a word. We had plenty of words. "She said you snapped," Jessica hissed, leaning in so the customers nearby wouldn't hear. "She said you got paranoid about finances, started accusing her of things, and then just packed a bag and left. She said you're having some kind of midlife crisis." "Is that what she said?" "She's carrying your child, Logan." Jessica's voice rose, cracking with emotion. "How can you be so cold? I always thought you were a good guy. But leaving a woman when she's most vulnerable? That's low, even for a bartender." That stung, the classist jab, but I let it slide. "Jessica," I said calmly, "did she tell you why I was paranoid about the finances?" "Because you're controlling," she shot back. "No, because I saw a charge for a fertility clinic." Jessica paused. "So?" "She was checking on the baby." "Did she tell you why I left?" "Because you're scared of responsibility," she sneered. "Because you're a coward." I looked at her. I really looked at her. She wasn't malicious. She was manipulated. She was operating on bad intel, fighting a war for a general who was lying to the troops. I reached into my back pocket. I didn't have the medical file on me. That was with Daniel, but I had the truth. "Jess," I said, dropping my voice to a whisper, "I'm sterile." She blinked. "What?" "I'm sterile," I repeated, enunciating every syllable. "Azoospermia. Born that way. 0 sperm count. Verified by a specialist on Monday." Jessica froze. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. She looked like a computer trying to process a code that didn't compute. "I can't have kids," I said. "Physically, biologically. Impossible." She stared at me, her eyes searching my face for a lie, but I had nothing to hide. "So," I continued, "unless Marissa's figured out how to override biology, that baby isn't mine." Jessica slumped against the bar. The righteous anger drained out of her instantly, replaced by confusion and shock. She reached for the whiskey she had ignored and downed it in one swallow. "Oh my God," she whispered. "She cheated, Jess. She got pregnant. And instead of telling me, she tried to pass it off as a miracle. She tried to make me raise another man's kid because the real father is married and moved away." Jessica put a hand to her forehead. She told me it was yours. She swore it. She looked me in the eye and said you were just freaking out. "She's lying to you," I said gently, "just like she lied to me. She needs you on her side, so she's selling you the version of the story where she's the victim." Jessica looked at her empty glass. She looked sick. I didn't know. Logan, I swear. I know you didn't." "Who is it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Who's the father?" "Some guy she worked with. Doesn't matter now." Jessica stood there for a long moment, caught between loyalty and reality. Then she dug into her purse, pulled out a 20, and slapped it on the bar. "I can't be here," she said, her voice thick. I have to go. "Take care, Jess." She practically ran out of the bar. I watched her go, feeling a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. I wasn't happy to blow up Marissa's support system. I wasn't happy to humiliate her best friend, but I was done protecting the lie. The truth is a messy thing. It spatters on everyone standing too close. Later that night, after closing, I sat on the fire escape outside my window. The city air was cool, smelling of exhaust and rain. My phone buzzed. It was Daniel. A text. Check your email. Her lawyer responded. I went inside, cracked open my laptop, and sat on the lumpy mattress. The screen glowed blue in the dark room. I opened the document. It was a standard response, but with a few interesting clauses. Marissa wasn't contesting the divorce. She wasn't contesting the asset division. She knew she had no leverage there. But there was a request for transitional spousal support due to her medical condition. And buried at the bottom, a heavily worded non-disclosure agreement. She wanted me to sign a contract stating I would never discuss the paternity of the child or the circumstances of the divorce publicly. She was trying to buy my silence. She was terrified that if word got out, real word, not just rumors, it might get back to the affair partner's wife, or her parents, or her boss. I stared at the screen. I typed a reply to Daniel. No support, no NDA. I hit send. Then I thought about it and typed another one. Tell them if she pushes for the NDA, I'll subpoena the affair partner for a paternity test. If she wants to keep this quiet, she walks away with what she has and leaves me alone. I shut the laptop. It was harsh. It was aggressive. But I was done being the nice guy. The nice guy got played. The nice guy got handed a plate of lava cake and a lie. I looked at my left hand. The tan line where my ring used to be was still there, a pale band of skin against the rest of my finger. It looked like a scar. I rubbed it with my thumb. It would fade. Give us summer in the sun, a few months of working with my hands, and the skin would darken. The evidence would disappear. But for now, it was a reminder. I lay back on the bed, listening to the city settle down. I wonder what was happening at the house right now. Was Jessica there? Was she confronting Marissa? Or were they crying together, spinning a new story about how I was a monster for using medical records as a weapon? It didn't matter. I realized then that the hardest part wasn't leaving. The hardest part wasn't the loneliness. The hardest part was a phantom limb sensation. I kept reaching for a partner who wasn't there. I kept seeing things, a funny meme, a weird dog on the street, and my first instinct was to share it with her. And then I'd remember, she's not your person anymore. She never really was. Not the way I thought. I fell asleep to the sound of a siren wailing in the distance, fading away into the dark. The next morning, Thursday, brought a different kind of visitor. I was stocking the cooler, crates of beer stacked around me like a fortress, when I heard the front door chime. We weren't open yet. The door should have been locked. We're closed. I shouted from behind the bar. I know. The voice was quiet, familiar. I stood up, wiping my hands on a rag. It was Elena. Marissa's sister stood in the doorway, looking smaller than usual. She was clutching her coat tight around her, her eyes darting around the empty bar, like she expected an ambush. I shouldn't be here, she said. Probably not, I agreed. Marissa would kill you. She doesn't know. Elena walked further in, her boots squeaking on the hardwood. She's in a bad way, Logan. I didn't offer her a drink. I didn't smile. I just leaned against the cooler. She made her bed, Elena. I know she did. Elena stopped a few feet away from the bar. She looked torn, her loyalty to her sister warring with her conscience. She's terrified. Jessica came over last night screaming. It was a scene. Marissa had a panic attack. I told Jessica the truth. I said, that's all. I know. Elena looked down at her hands. I'm not here to defend her. I'm not. What she did, it makes me sick. I look at her, and I don't understand how we grew up in the same house. Then why are you here? She looked up, her eyes wet. Because I'm worried about you. That caught me off guard. Me? You loved her, Logan. You built your whole life around her. I know you're acting tough. The sterile diagnosis, the lawyer, the quick move, but I know you. You don't just turn off 5 years of love. I felt a lump form in my throat. I swallowed it down hard. I have to, I said. Survival instinct. I just wanted to say... Elena hesitated, then took a breath. I want to say that I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I'm sorry my family is putting you through this. You didn't deserve it. You were a good husband. I looked at the floor. The wood was scuffed and worn. Thanks, Elena. She reached into her pocket and pulled out an envelope. She slid it onto the bar. What's this? It's a check, she said. From me. It's not much. But I know you moved into the studio. I know money is tight until the assets get split. Just take it. Please. Call an apology tax. I stared at the envelope. I wanted to refuse it. I wanted to be proud. Elena, I can't. You can, she said firmly. And you will, because you're going to need a deposit on a real apartment eventually. You can't live above a bar forever. She turned to leave. Elena? She stopped at the door. Yeah. Does she know who the father is? Really? Elena nodded slowly, not turning around. Yeah. She told me last night after Jessica left. She admitted everything. Who? Does it matter? She asked softly. No, I decided. I guess it doesn't. Take care of yourself, Logan. She walked out. I picked up the envelope. It was a check for $2,000. For the next chapter was written in the memo line. I put it in the register, feeling a strange lightness. My marriage was a lie. My future was uncertain. My ability to have a biological family was gone. But standing there in the quiet bar, holding a check from the sister of the woman who broke me, I realized something important. I lost a wife. I didn't lose my dignity. And I didn't lose the people who actually saw me. I went back to stocking the cooler, one bottle at a time, row by row, ordering the chaos, building something new. They tell you that divorce is a war. You imagine screaming matches, thrown vases, dramatic scenes in the rain, where someone drives away while the other falls to their knees. But the truth is much more boring and much more exhausting. Divorce is paperwork. It's emails. It's sitting on hold with a utility company trying to explain why you need to take your name off the electric bill for a house you haven't slept in for 3 weeks. It's the slow, bureaucratic dismantling of a life that took 5 years to build. For the next month, that was my life. I lived in the space between the bar downstairs and the mattress upstairs. I became a creature of logistics. I worked. I slept. I signed documents Daniel sent me. The silence from Marissa's camp had turned into a different kind of noise, legal noise. Her lawyer tried a few more times to push her the NDA, to push for emotional distress payments. But every time they pushed, Daniel pushed back with the one weapon we had, the truth. My client is happy to sign an NDA, Daniel told them during a conference call I listened to on speakerphone, right after we deposed the biological father and entered paternity test into the public record. We just need to be thorough, right? They dropped the request an hour later. She was terrified, not of losing me. That ship had sailed, but the explosion that would happen if her secret got out. She was protecting the other man. She was protecting her reputation. And that fear gave me all the leverage I needed. By mid-November, the agreement was drafted. We were selling the house. We were splitting the proceeds. I was walking away with my car, my retirement accounts, and my freedom. She was walking away with the baby and whatever life she could salvage from the wreckage. But before the final court date, there was one last thing I had to do. I had to go back to the house. The real estate agent, a perky woman named Brenda who used too many exclamation points in her texts, needed us to clear out the final personal items before the staging company came in. Marissa was staying with her parents. The house was empty. I'll go Tuesday morning. I told Brenda. I'll be out by noon. Driving back to Bridgeport Lane felt like driving to a funeral. The trees were bare now, skeleton fingers scratching against a gray sky. The neighborhood looked the same. Trash cans on the curb, mailboxes standing in neat rows, but it felt like a foreign country. I pulled into the driveway. Her car wasn't there. I unlocked the door. The air inside was stale, cold. The heat had been turned down to 55 to save money. It smelled like dust and fading memories. I walked through the living room. The furniture was still there, but it looked lifeless without the clutter of daily living. No throw blankets, no magazines, no coffee cups, just objects. I went upstairs to the guest room. This was the room we had earmarked for a nursery. We hadn't done much to it, just painted the walls a soft, neutral cream a few years ago. But in my head, I had furnished it 1,000 times. I knew where the crib would go. I knew where the rocking chair would sit by the window, so the morning sun would hit it. Now, it was just a pile of boxes. I started taping them up. Books, winter coats, a box of old electronics. As I was moving a stack of towels from the hallway closet, something fluttered to the floor. It had been tucked between the linens, maybe hidden, maybe forgotten. It was a glossy strip of paper, black and white, an ultrasound. I froze. I stared at it lying on the hardwood floor. I didn't want to touch it. It felt radioactive. But I bent down and picked it up. There it was, the grainy, gray smudge of a life. Baby Holt. The label said at the top, 10 weeks. I stared at that label. Baby Holt. She had used my name. She had gone to the clinic, given them my name, and printed this picture knowing full well that Holt was a lie. She had probably held this picture, looked at it, and practiced the speech she gave me over the lava cake. I looked at the gray smudge. A heartbeat, a spine, fingers. I waited for the anger to come. I waited for the grief. I waited to feel that crushing sense of loss of the child I would never have. But as I stood there in the cold hallway of my empty house, I felt nothing. It wasn't my baby. It wasn't just biology. It was spiritual. I looked at that image, and I felt zero connection. It was a stranger. It was a complication. It was the physical manifestation of the betrayal that had ended my life as I knew it. I realized then that I wasn't mourning the loss of this child. I was mourning the loss of the dream. And dreams, unlike people, can be rebuilt. I walked downstairs to the kitchen. The trash can was still there, empty and clean. I held the ultrasound over the bin. For a second, I hesitated, not out of sentiment, but out of a strange sense of respect for the innocent life in the picture. The kid didn't ask for this. The kid didn't ask to be a pawn in a game of deception. Good luck, kid, I whispered. You're going to need it. I dropped the photo into the trash. It fluttered down and landed face up. I grabbed a handful of junk mail from the counter, pizza coupons, credit card offers, and dropped them on top of it, burying the lie. I finished packing in an hour. I loaded the truck. I did one final sweep of the house. I stood in the kitchen one last time. This was where we danced to Sinatra while cooking risotto. This was where we fought about money. This was where she told me she was pregnant. I placed my key on the granite counter. I didn't look back. I walked out, locked the door from the inside, and pulled it shut. The click of the lock was final. That night, the night before the hearing, the bar was quiet. It was a Tuesday, rainy and cold. I sent the bartender home early and worked the tap myself. Around 10 p.m., the door opened. I looked up, expecting a straggler looking for a nightcap. It was Marcus. He shook off his umbrella, stomped his boots on the mat, and walked to the bar. He looked serious. He wasn't here for jokes. Heard tomorrow is the big day, he said, sliding onto a stool. Yep, I said, polishing a glass. 0900 hours. Courthouse. You good? I put the glass down. I am. Marcus studied me. You know, Sarah and I, we talked about it. What she did. Yeah. Sarah's pissed. She said if I ever pulled something like that, she'd run me over with a truck. I chuckled. Sarah's a good woman. She is, Marcus agreed. He paused, tracing the grain of the wood on the bar. But she also said, it takes two to break a marriage, but only one to kill it. Marissa killed it, Logan. You didn't fail. You just survived the crash. I looked at my friend. We didn't do deep emotional talks often. We were guys who communicated in sports stats and insults. But this meant something. Thanks, Mark. You got a plan for after? He asked. After the judge bangs the gavel? Work, I said. Save money. Find a real apartment. Maybe take a trip. A trip sounds good, he nodded. Go somewhere warm. Somewhere they don't know your name. Maybe. He finished his beer and stood up. Good luck tomorrow. Text me when it's done. Will do. After he left, I locked up. I turned off the neon signs. The room plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the streetlights outside. I went upstairs to my studio. I laid out my suit for the morning. It was a charcoal gray one I'd worn to my sister's wedding. It still smelled faintly of dry cleaning chemicals. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the window. Tomorrow I would see her. I hadn't seen her since the day I moved out. I hadn't heard her voice, except in my head. I wondered what she would look like. I wondered if she would be showing yet. I wondered if she would try to speak to me. I laid down, staring at the ceiling fan. I thought about the man I was 2 months ago. The man worrying about a $250 bill. The man trying to figure out why his wife was distant. The man who thought love was enough to fix anything. That man was gone. The man lying in this bed was harder. He was colder. He had a scar on his heart that would probably never fully heal. But he was also free. And as I closed my eyes, listening to the rain tap against the glass, I realized that freedom wasn't just about escaping a lie. It was about facing the truth, no matter how ugly it was, and refusing to blink. Tomorrow, I would walk into that courtroom. I would look her in the eye, and I would sign my name on the line that said the end. And then, for the first time in a long time, I would start a new page. The morning of the hearing arrived with a brilliant, blinding sun. It was cold, the kind of November chill that freezes your breath in your chest, but the sky was a piercing, relentless blue. I parked 3 blocks away from the courthouse. I wanted to walk. I wanted the cold air to wake me up. I adjusted my tie in the reflection of a shop window. I looked tired. Yes, there were circles under my eyes that hadn't been there a year ago, but I also looked sharp. I looked like a man who had his affairs in order. I walked up the granite steps of the courthouse. People were rushing around, lawyers in expensive coats, defendants smoking nervous cigarettes, clerks clutching coffees. I pushed through the heavy wooden doors and went through security. Metal detector. Belt off. Phone in the tray. It felt like an airport, everyone waiting to go somewhere else. I found Daniel outside courtroom 3B. He looked calm, professional, holding a thick file. Morning, he said. Morning. She's already inside, he told me quietly. Her lawyer is with her. Remember the plan. We go in, we affirm the agreement. We present the medical evidence for paternity disestablishment. The judge signs off. Short and sweet. I'm ready. You don't have to talk to her, Daniel reminded me. In fact, I prefer you didn't. I have nothing to say, Dan. He nodded, checked his watch. All right, it's time. He opened the heavy double doors. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No towering judge's bench or dramatic lighting like on TV. Just wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights buzzing softly, and the low murmur of clerks. And there she was. She was sitting at the table on the left. She was wearing a navy blue blazer, conservative, modest. Her hair was tucked behind her ears. She was looking down at her hands, which were clasped tight in her lap. When I walked in, she looked up. Our eyes locked across the aisle. I expected to feel a spike of adrenaline. I expected hate or love or regret. But looking at her face, pale, drawn, terrified, I just felt a profound sense of distance. It was like looking at someone through the wrong end of a telescope. She was so far away. I walked to the table on the right and sat down. I didn't nod. I didn't smile. I faced the front. All rise, the bailiff called out. The judge walked in. She was a middle-aged woman with stern glasses and a no-nonsense walk. She sat down, adjusted her robe, and opened a file in front of her. Case number 4492, Holt versus Holt, she read. She looked up, scanning the room. Counsel, are we ready to proceed? Yes, Your Honor, Daniel said, standing up. Yes, Your Honor, Marissa's lawyer echoed. The judge nodded. I have reviewed the settlement agreement filed by the parties. I see we have a mutual consent divorce with a full division of assets. And she paused, flipping a page. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she read. I see a motion to disestablish paternity based on medical evidence of sterility provided by the plaintiff. The room went very quiet. Is the defendant contesting this motion? The judge asked, looking directly at Marissa. Marissa's lawyer stood. Marissa stayed seated, her head bowed. No, Your Honor, her lawyer said. We are not contesting. My client stipulates to the facts presented in the medical report. She acknowledges that Mr. Holt is not the biological father of the unborn child. Hearing it said out loud, in a court of law, by a stranger, it was the final seal. It was done. The lie was legally dead. The judge nodded solemnly. Very well. The motion is granted. Logan Holt is hereby removed from any legal parentage or responsibility for child. She signed the paper. The sound of her pen scratching on the page was the only sound in the room. The divorce is granted, the judge said, closing the file. Good luck to you both. It was over. 10 minutes. 5 years of marriage dissolved in 10 minutes. I stood up. Daniel shook my hand. Congratulations, he whispered. You're a free man. Thanks, Dan. I turned to leave. I wanted to get out of there. I wanted fresh air. But as I reached the aisle, she stood up. Logan. Her voice was shaky, quiet. Daniel put a hand on my arm to stop me, but I shook him off gently. I turned to face her. She looked wrecked. Her eyes were red. She looked like she wanted to reach out, but she knew better. She started, then choked on the word. The courtroom was clearing out. It was just us, the lawyers, and the empty benches. I just wanted you to know, she whispered. I really thought I could fix this. I really thought, if I just loved you enough, the rest wouldn't matter. She was still doing it, still rewriting the story to make herself the tragic hero. I looked at her one last time. You weren't trying to fix it, Marissa, I said softly. You were trying to win. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. And nobody won, I added. I turned around. I walked down the aisle, past the wooden benches, past the bar, and out the double doors. I walked out of the courthouse and into the blinding November sun. The wind hit my face, cold and clean. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that felt thinner, lighter. I stood on the steps for a moment, watching the city move. Cars honking, people walking, life continuing. I checked my watch. 10:15 a.m. The bar wouldn't open for another hour. I walked to my truck. I unlocked the door, got in, and sat there. I was alone. And for the first time in my life, alone didn't feel like a lack of something. It felt like a beginning. I started the engine. Where to? I asked myself. I didn't have an answer yet, and that was okay. I put the truck in gear and pulled into traffic, merging into the flow of the living. The morning after the divorce didn't feel like a victory lap. It didn't feel like a funeral, either. It felt like waking up after a fever breaks. You're weak, you're dehydrated, and your sheets are a mess, but the heat is gone. The delirium is cleared. You're just present. I woke up in my studio apartment at 7 a.m. without an alarm. The delivery truck was back in the alley, the driver cursing as he unloaded kegs. The familiar clank thud of metal on pavement vibrating through my floor. For the first time, I didn't mind it. It was the sound of my life. My real life. Not the curated, quiet, deceitful life I had been living in the suburbs, but the gritty, honest one I had reclaimed. I sat up, swung my legs over the edge of the mattress, and looked around. The room was still sparse. Just my clothes, a few books, and a laptop. But the air felt different. The legal suffocating weight that had been pressing on my chest for a month was gone. I wasn't a husband anymore. I wasn't defendant. I was just Logan. About an hour later, while I was brewing a pot of cheap coffee on a hot plate, there was a knock at the door. Not the tentative knock of a customer, but a sharp, authoritative rap. My sister, Julia, had a key to the bar downstairs. She helped with the books sometimes, but she never came up to the apartment unless it was an emergency, or unless she felt I needed an intervention. I opened the door. Julia stood there, looking wind-blown and fierce, holding a brown paper bag from the bakery down the street. She had that look on her face. The big sister looked That meant she was scanning me for damage. I heard, she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invite. Good morning to you too, I said, closing the door. She set the bag down on the small table. Pastries. The almond ones you like. And I brought real creamer because I know you're drinking that powder garbage. She pulled a carton of half and half out of her oversized purse. I smiled. It was a small thing, but it almost broke me. It's funny what gets to you when your walls are down. Not the big gestures, but the fact that someone remembered how you take your coffee. You really went through with it? She asked, finally looking me in the eye. She was leaning against the kitchenette counter, arms crossed. I did, I said. Paper signed. Judge stamped it yesterday. It's done, Jules. She exhaled a long breath through her nose, her shoulders dropping an inch. I was worried you'd back out. I was worried she'd cry and tell you some sob story, and you'd try to be the hero again. I'm done being the hero, I said, pouring 2 mugs. The hero gets killed in the first act. I'd rather be the narrator. They survive. She took the mug I offered her. So, she admitted it? The baby isn't yours. In open court, I said. Her lawyer stipulated to the sterility report. It's on the record. No paternity, no child support, no connection. Julia shook her head, a look of pure disgust crossing her face. I can't believe her. I really can't. I used to like her. Logan, we went to brunch. We texted. I thought she was the one for you. We all did, I said quietly. She's good at the performance. Or she was. But she's still carrying a life, Julia said, her voice softening just a fraction. That's the part that messes with me. That baby didn't lie to you. That baby is innocent. I looked at her for a long moment, taking a sip of the hot coffee. This was the question I had wrestled with in the dark. That baby isn't mine, Julia. I said firmly, I know, but... No, I interrupted. It's not just biology. She knew it wasn't mine. She looked me in the eye, knowing I couldn't have kids, even if I didn't know it yet. And she told me it was a miracle. She wasn't asking me to be a father. She was asking me to be an accomplice to a lie. Julia fell quiet. She tore off a piece of the almond pastry, staring at the flakes of sugar on the table. She wanted a clean slate. I continued, the realization crystallizing as I spoke. She made a mess, and instead of cleaning it up, she tried to paint over it. And she tried to use me as the paint. I can't forgive that. I can forgive the cheating. Maybe, but I can't forgive the attempt to rewrite my reality. The room was silent, save for the hum of the fridge and the distant traffic. You were always the one who saw the good in people, Julia said quietly, looking up at me. Mom always said that about you. Logan's got a soft heart. I still do, I replied. I haven't turned into a monster, but I've learned something, Jules. I see the good in people. Yeah, but now I also see what they choose when they think they won't get caught. She nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her expression. She stood up, walked over, and hugged me. It wasn't a gentle hug. It was a rib-crushing squeeze. I hated her for what she did to you, she whispered into my shoulder. I wanted to go over there and scream at her. I don't hate her, I said softly, and I was surprised to find it was true. Hate takes energy. Hate means I'm still holding on to it. I just won't carry it anymore. I put it down. When she left, I stood at the window for a long time. Down below, the city was waking up. I saw a kid racing his bike down the sidewalk, backpack bouncing. I saw a neighbor raking leaves into golden piles, fighting a losing battle against the wind. I saw a dog barking at a squirrel, straining at the leash, convinced that if he just pulled hard enough, he'd catch it. Everything looked exactly the same as it did a month ago. The world hadn't stopped because my marriage ended. The sun hadn't dimmed, but something had changed. I realized I had spent the last 5 years trying to be the perfect husband, the stabilizer, the steady hand. I had suppressed my own instincts to keep the peace. I had ignored the red flags because I wanted a fairy tale. I wasn't doing that anymore. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed. A notification from the bank. Wire transfer received. $142,500. The house proceeds. It was a staggering amount of money to see on a screen. It represented the equity of 5 years, the down payment, the monthly struggle, the renovations, the appreciation. It was a number that summarized a decade of my life. I stared at it. I could buy a new house. I could buy a fancy car. I could invest it and be sensible. But then I remembered Marcus's advice. Go somewhere warm. Somewhere they don't know your name. I opened a new tab on my laptop. I searched for flights. Not for a vacation, but for a scouting trip. Maybe Florida. Maybe the Carolinas. Maybe somewhere with a coast where the air smelled like salt instead of regret. I wasn't going to run away. I love this bar. I love my friends. But I needed to know that I could leave if I wanted to. I needed to know that my world wasn't limited to the zip code where my ex-wife lived. I closed the laptop, one step at a time. That evening, I went downstairs to open the bar. It was a Wednesday, usually slow, but the regulars started trickling in around 5 p.m. I was pouring a draft when the door opened and a group of young guys walked in. They were loud, laughing, celebrating something. One of them, a kid in a varsity jacket, looked at me. Hey, man, round of shots for the table. My buddy here just got engaged. He slapped his friend on the back. The friend was beaming, looking terrified and thrilled all at once. I paused, holding the bottle of whiskey. A month ago, this would have gutted me. Seeing that hope, that naive belief that love conquers all, it would have tasted like ash in my mouth. I would have felt bitter. I would have wanted to warn him. Run, kid. It's a trap. But tonight, I looked at the kid. I saw the joy in his face. It was real. Just because my story ended in a train wreck didn't mean his would. Love wasn't the lie. Marissa was the lie. I poured the shots. I lined them up on the bar. On the house, I said. The kid looked surprised. Really? Thanks, man. Congratulations, I said, and I meant it. Hold on to it. Treat her right. And tell the truth. Always. I will, he promised, raising the glass. To the truth. To the truth, I echoed, raising my water glass. They went back to their table, loud and happy. I went back to wiping the bar. The door opened again. It was Marcus. He walked in, took one look at me, and smiled. You look different, he said, taking a seat. Yeah, you look lighter. I feel lighter, I admitted. Hear anything from the other side, he asked, keeping his voice low. Elena texted me. I said, Marissa is moving, going to stay with an aunt in Chicago. Wants a fresh start where nobody knows she's pregnant. Marcus nodded slowly. Probably for the best. Yeah, it is. And you? I'm here, I said, gesturing to the room. I'm working. I've got money in the bank. I've got my health. And I've got a studio apartment that smells like stale beer. Marcus laughed, living the dream. It's not a bad dream, I said. It's mine. I looked out the front window of the bar. The streetlights had just flickered on, casting long, amber shadows across the pavement. I thought about the last fight I had with Marissa in the kitchen. I thought about the way I begged for answers. I thought about the desperate need to be understood, to be validated. I finally understood something I never did before. Sometimes dignity doesn't come from standing your ground and fighting until you're bloodied. It doesn't come from forcing someone to admit they were wrong. It doesn't come from getting the last word or the perfect apology. Sometimes dignity is quiet. It comes from knowing the truth when everyone else is lying. It comes from packing a bag and walking out the door without screaming. It comes from accepting that you cannot save everyone and that sometimes the only person you can save is yourself. I wiped the counter one last time, tossing the rag into the bin. Another round? I asked Marcus. Hit me? I poured the beer. The foam rose to the top, perfect and golden. The music was playing, something soulful and slow. The chatter of the bar filled the space. The world kept turning. I took a breath. I was Logan Holt. I was sterile. I was divorced. I was alone. And for the first time in a long, long time, I was okay. I didn't look back at the door. I looked forward, at the row of bottles shining under the lights, and at the reflection of the man standing in the mirror behind them. I nodded to him. He nodded back. We had work to do.